Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into a case that is, well, deeply unsettling. We're looking at Marc Sappington, who became known by this really chilling nickname, the Kansas City Vampire.
Yeah, it's a disturbing one. And to get through it, we're relying on the source material provided. Uh, there's an article from the True TV Crime Library, a transcript from a Bailey Sarian YouTube video, and the Wikipedia entry on Sappington.
Right. So our goal here is to use these sources, just these sources, to try and understand what happened, the sequence of events, what makes this case so unusual according to the material, and what we can learn about Sappington himself, the motivations he claimed.
Exactly, sticking only to what's in these documents. And like you said, that nickname isn't just for show. The sources describe some really graphic elements, blood drinking, cannibalism. But there's also this weird contrast with his personality, apparently, and this internal narrative he described driving the axe.
So where do the sources start us off? Marc Sappington, born February 9th, 1978, grew up north side of Kansas City, Kansas.
Mhm. And they describe the area as, well, a mix. You'd hear church bells, but also police sirens. Religious community, but also dealing with a lot of crime back then.
Okay. And he was raised by a single mother, Mary White. She apparently used the church quite a bit to try and keep him, on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, and it seemed to work for a while. The sources mentioned he was a choir boy, stayed out of major trouble initially.
But what about him as a person back then? The sources paint an interesting picture.
They do. Not a great student, apparently, but smart, articulate, witty even. Had a quick smile, this quiet charm that people seemed drawn to. That's the description.
But then things took a turn.
Right. The sources say he started hanging out with the, quote, wrong crowd, developed drug habits.
And they named specific drugs.
Yes, very specific. Danks, which are described as cigarettes soaked in embalming fluid, then dried and smoked.
Embalming fluid. Wow.
Yeah, and also PCP, angel dust.
Okay, and the effects? Danks cause hallucinations, the sources say, and PCP? Well, we know that's serious.
Very serious. Powerful hallucinogen. It was used as an anesthetic way back, but they stopped because the side effects were so severe. Distorts everything, sights, sounds, colors, can trigger paranoia, even psychosis. And there's a note that PCP is sometimes in the embalming fluid used for danks. So that might have been his entry point to it.
So you've got this charming guy seemingly descending into some heavy, heavy drug use known for hallucinations.
Exactly. A recipe for, well, disaster, as it turned out.
The sources mention minor drug run-ins before this, but March 2001 seems to be the major turning point. His first serious crime described in these materials.
Right. An armed robbery with someone named Armando. Armando's described as wanting to be a tough guy, maybe prove himself, not in a gang, but had that ambition.
Yeah.
They got an assault rifle together, apparently, to, boost their reputation.
And they targeted someone specific.
Yeah, David Marshock owned a local auto dealership. Armando apparently had beef. That's the word he used with him. Something about faulty car tags on an old Impala he bought.
A beef over car tags. Okay,
Yeah.
so what was the plan?
Sounds almost bizarrely simple in the description. Walk up to Marshock, show the gun, demand cash. Armando needed money to get his impounded car back. Armando talks, Mark just, flashes the rifle. That was it.
But it didn't go down like that on March 16th, 2001.
Not at all. Armando went in first, apparently hassled Marshock, who was having lunch with an employee. Armando leaves. Then Mark goes in. Black mask, hooded coat. Yeah. And he just opens fire. The sources say for seemingly no reason at all, a complete deviation.
Oh, man, so the employee got away.
Yeah, employee escaped. But Marshock was shot inside, died later. There was even a witness, a customer across the street, who saw Mark shooting him while Armando ran for the car. Then they took off.
Using the gun wasn't the plan. The sources stressed that.
Definitely not. After that, Armando fled to Texas. Got arrested later, but apparently didn't rat out Mark. Mark stayed in KC.
Okay. And this is where the story takes that really dark, really unusual twist, according to the sources. After the Marshock murder.
You start hearing voices. Auditory hallucinations.
And what were these voices telling him?
The commands were incredibly disturbing. Harvest human blood and flesh.
Harvest? Seriously? And why? What reason did he give?
He said the voices told him they would kill him if he didn't comply. The sources emphasized this point. He claimed he was acting out of fear for his own life.
But not divine commands. No God or Satan mentioned.
No, the sources are clear on that. Not divine, just a threat. Do this or you die.
And did the voices tell him who to target or how?
Apparently not. No rules about victims, timing, methods, what to do after. That was all left up to Mark, according to his account.
What did he do?
For about 3 weeks, the sources say, he just walked the streets. Kansas City. looking at people, asking himself, what about him? What about her? Just random people passing by. But the voices weren't satisfied, he said. Those people, the source notes, were totally clueless. They were being sized up.
That's terrifying, just walking around looking for a victim chosen by voices, and this led to the spree.
Yeah. 3 more victims in just 4 days. April 2001.
Who was first in that spree?
Harry T. Green, 25 years old. A longtime friend, actually, from the neighborhood. Mark saw him on his front steps, April 7th.
A friend. How did he choose him?
Mark said the voices just took over when he saw Terry. The command was specific this time. Lure him to the basement, use a hunting knife hidden there. So Mark makes up an excuse. Hey, man, got to see this thing in the basement. Something like that.
And Terry went.
Yeah, trusted him, went down to the basement. Mark attacked him with a knife.
How did the sources describe it?
As a high-energy thing. Blood everywhere, splattered on the walls. Very violent.
And after? After Terry was dead.
The voices weren't done. Told him to drink the blood. So the sources describe him kneeling, trying to lap it up, kind of like an animal.
God. Did he?
Yeah.
Finish?
Yeah. Heard noises, got scared someone was coming. Voices changed the command. Get rid of the body.
So he panicked.
Big time. Put the body in Terry's own car, covered it with a tarp, drove it across the river to Kansas City, Missouri. The sources kind of chuckle about the 2 Kansas Cities being confusing. Left the car near a nightclub they used to go to, took a cab home.
And the body was found.
3 days later, April 10th, by Missouri police. The Kansas cops were initially relieved it wasn't their jurisdiction, probably not connecting the dots yet.
Okay, April 10th. The day Terry's body is found. What happens next? Because the spree continues that day, right?
Right. That same day, Mark's high sources say he couldn't remember if it was dank or PCP. Goes over to his best friend Eric Phoenix's house early in the morning.
His best friend.
Yeah. Wakes up Eric's mom, asks to borrow a screwdriver, hangs out, watches TV, normal stuff. Goes upstairs, comes back down, and grabs a knife off the kitchen counter on his way out back.
Okay, this sounds ominous.
It is. In the backyard, he hears the voices again. And this time there's a deadline. He recounted them saying something like, it's do or die. If I don't eat, I'm going to die within 6 or 7 hours.
Beep. Oh, no.
Yeah. Just then, Eric's stepbrother, Michael Weaver, 22, comes outside. Mark sees him, hears that deadline, and thinks, according to the source, well, Michael will have to do,
He just decided. Like that.
apparently, use the kitchen knife, stab Michael in the back. The description says the blade was long, went right through his chest.
Jesus. Did Michael?
He tried to get away, got in his car, tried to drive off, but crashed into a light pole right there.
And Mark?
Saw the crash as his chance to finally give the voices what they wanted, drink the blood.
But he was interrupted. Again.
Again. Neighbor heard the crash, called 911. Mark heard sirens coming, tried to move Michael's car, only got it a little way into an alley, then abandoned it, walked home.
Knocked home.
Yeah.
After killing his best friend's stepbrother.
Right. And one source points out, technically, killing Michael, his 3rd victim in this cluster, made him fit their definition of a serial killer.
Grim milestone. But he wasn't done for the day.
Not even close. Walking home from Michael's murder, he spots Freddie Brown, 16 years old, also known as Alton Fred Brown Jr. in one source. Freddie apparently really looked up to Mark, like a big brother figure.
And the voices targeted him, too.
That's what Mark claimed. Voices said Freddie was the new target.
How did he get Freddie?
Invited him over.
Huh.
Come smoke some wet, he reportedly said, which the sources describe as basically like dank weed or a cigarette dipped in fluid. Freddie idolized him, so he went along.
Back to the basement.
Back to the basement. Same pattern as Terry, but a different weapon this time. Sources say he used a shotgun. Shot Freddie in the back. Blood exploded everywhere.
And this time, no interruptions.
No interruptions. Sources say he was finally free of distractions. He drank Freddie's blood, fulfilling that command.
But then the voices asked for more.
Yeah. Now they told him to consume flesh. Cannibalism.
Oh, God. How? How did the sources describe that?
They say he butchered the body. Cut off arms and legs. He tried eating a piece of the leg raw, but said it made him sick. So he thought, okay, maybe cooking it would help. He reportedly decided to fry it, cooked it, and then ate that piece. Also drank more blood.
I have no words. What did he do then?
Stuffed what was left of Freddie's body in a trash bag.
Yeah.
But leftovers, on the floor. Basement was a wreck. Then he just went for a walk. Maybe to digest, maybe just walk without the voices screaming for a hunt.
And the discovery, how did that happen?
Just hours later, his mom, Mary, came home, saw blood drops near the cellar door, went down, saw the stairs, the whole scene. She called the cops immediately.
While she's calling the cops, where's Mark?
He's out, probably high, definitely paranoid.
Yeah.
Convinced the cops are closing in. Around 9:30 that same night, the night he killed Michael and Freddie, he runs into a neighbor, Anita Washington. She's just sitting in her car in her driveway.
What did he do?
Pointed a gun at her, got in the back seat, told her to drive him to Kansas City, Missouri. Again, crossing state lines.
Was he saying anything?
Kept repeating, "I'm a dead man, I'm a dead man." Over and over, apparently.
Did she manage to get away?
Yeah, luckily. Mark decided he should drive instead, told her to pull over. She saw her chance, bolted from the car, ran to the nearest house, and called the police.
So the chase was on.
Yep. He led them on a chase, but they caught him. Arrested April 12th.
And the interrogation. Did he talk right away?
No. Silent. For hours. Cops tried everything, couldn't get a word out of him. They were actually about to give up, pack it in for the night.
And then?
He just spoke. Out of nowhere, repeated these words. Vampirism, cannibalism.
Chilling. And that opened the floodgates.
Completely. Once he started, he couldn't stop. Confessed everything. Terry, Michael, Freddie, the carjacking. Gave this detailed emotional account, the sources say, including the blood drinking, eating Freddie's flesh.
What struck the police the most about the confession?
His attitude about picking victims. They described it as nonchalant. He literally said there was no method to his madness. Just seeing people on the street. What about him? What about her? Those totally clueless potential victims.
Terrifyingly random. Did he cooperate after confessing?
He did. Took them to where he ditched the keys from Michael's and Terry's cars.
Why do the sources think he was silent for so long at first?
Detectives apparently wondered if it was shame, maybe remorse kicking in initially, before he just let it all out. So, he's caught. He's confessed. What happens next? Investigation, trial.
Bail was set pretty high, $2 million, sources say.
And investigators started digging deeper. Realized it wasn't just the drugs. Psychological testing revealed he'd been suffering from schizophrenia since he was about 16. It had gotten worse over the years. Adding PCP to that, the sources say it did not help. Understatement of the year, probably.
Schizophrenia, does that explain the voices?
It's certainly consistent with symptoms like auditory hallucinations, absolutely. And there's a mention that his mother also had schizophrenia, which, the sources suggest, might mean he didn't even fully recognize the illness in himself.
So the defense strategy was based on his mental state.
Yeah. Not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. They argued he couldn't form the necessary criminal intent because of the schizophrenia and the drug use combined.
Did the trial happen quickly?
No, it dragged out. Sources say it starts and stops over the next 3 years. Lots of questions about whether he was competent to even stand trial at various points.
But eventually, he was deemed competent.
Yes. Trial for Terry, Michael, and Freddie's murders, plus the carjacking and burglary, started July 2004. David Marshak's murder was tried separately later.
What was the key evidence? That confession must have been huge.
Oh, absolutely. They played the whole hour-long tape for the jury. Jurors heard him describe stabbing Michael, leaving Terry's body, shooting Freddie, dismembering him, eating the leg, and they heard that chilling bit where he asked the detective if he could chomp on the cop's leg. Right there on the tape.
Unbelievable. What was the prosecution's stats? Did they buy the voices made me do it completely?
They apparently doubted his claim that the voices only came when he was high, but they acknowledged the confirmed diagnosis, severe mental illness. Interestingly, they didn't push for the death penalty. They were hoping for life in a mental hospital, aiming for treatment.
And the verdict?
Came back fast. After just an hour, the jury found him guilty. 3 counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, aggravated burglary. That was July 2004. Sentence was 3 consecutive life terms for the murders, plus extra time for the other charges.
And the trial for David Marshak, the first victim.
That was later, December 10th, 2004. Convicted of attempted aggravated robbery and Marshak's murder. Another life sentence.
So the bottom line is?
He's never getting out of jail. That's what the sources confirm. The Kansas Supreme Court upheld the convictions in 2007.
Is there any update on his condition in prison?
Just a brief note in the sources. He started taking medication for schizophrenia in prison. And apparently, the voices became quiet.
Wow. Okay, so looking back at this whole thing, Sappington really doesn't fit the mold, does he? According to these sources, he defies typical serial killer profiles.
In several ways, yeah. He was young, 21 during the spree. The onset was sudden. And the sources point out the racial aspect. He was African-American. His spree victims were African-American. This contrasts with some common profiles mentioned in criminology literature that often focus on white male offenders and victims.
And the motive for the cannibalism, It wasn't sexual like some infamous cases.
No, the sources are clear on that. Not sexualized like, say, Jeffrey Dahmer. For Sappington, it was presented purely as fulfilling the voice's command to consume, driven by that fear they'd kill him if he didn't. Non-sexual.
It's that contrast again, isn't it? The outward persona versus the internal reality.
Exactly. Cops found him bright, articulate, funny even. But the pathology was right there under the surface, shown by that horrifying question about biting the cop's leg.
Did the sources mention how the community reacted? His neighbors?
There's a mention that some neighbors initially thought maybe he wanted notoriety, like trying to be the next Jeffrey Dahmer, famous for eating victims.
And the judge's comments.
Really powerful. Called him the closest thing to a homicide time bomb there is. Pointed directly at the untreated schizophrenia fueled by the drug use creating those voices.
So for you listening, why does this case, based on these sources, resonate? What's the takeaway?
I think it starkly shows the potential devastating consequences when severe mental illness goes untreated, especially when combined with heavy substance abuse. It's a terrifying look at how someone could seem, okay, even charming on the outside, while being driven by these horrific internal forces.
And the randomness of it all. That's what gets me. Picking victims just by walking down the street. What about him? What about her?
Absolutely. It highlights that awful vulnerability, just being in the wrong place when someone's internal demons spill out into the real world.
So Marc Sappington is serving consecutive life sentences, and the sources say with medication, those terrifying voices have finally gone quiet.
Yeah, it's a grim end to a horrifying story.
So as you think about this deep dive, based purely on these sources, consider that contrast. The articulate young man described early on and the acts he committed. What does this story tell us about untreated mental illness, drug use, and the potential for violence hidden beneath the surface? And maybe the most chilling question. What does it mean when victims are chosen with such terrifying randomness, just a glance on the street deciding life or death, something to really think about?